Previously on the book of Shmuel Part Bet, we read David's swan song and pointed out the similarities to Chana's song. We also met David's mighty men and closed the previous chapter by both awkwardly omitting Yoav and pointing out that the final warrior is intentionally listed as Uriah HaHittie. In this, our final chapter and penultimate shiur, we are presented with another of David's tribulations. With Hashem angry for an undisclosed reason, David is prompted to sin by conducting a census. From there, David is given a Sophie's choice of punishments, itself a hidden test. David seems to select correctly, but cannot avoid a massive toll on the people. Yet in an effort to stop the carnage, he is brought to the precipice of his dream of beginning the building of the temple. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so welcome to chapter 24, the last parak in the book of Shmuel. This has been 2 years in the making. Ooh. So thank you for being a part of the fantastic voyage. We'll start with a quote, and this is from Theodore Giesel, better known as Dr. Seuss. "I'm Yertle the turtle, oh marvelous me, for I am the ruler of all that I see."
This is why India loves you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like David Hasselhoff.
King of the...
Oh, welcome.
Yeah.
I got to welcome as more people come in. Okay. We are going to start with Pasuk Aleph. Vayosef.
You didn't finish.
That was all I had for this year. I wasn't going to do the whole spiel.
Chaftal, right?
Chaftal, yes, Chaftal. Vayosef af Adonai lecharos b'Yisrael. So the anger of Hashem flared again against Yisrael. Vayaset es David bahem lemor, and he incited David against them, saying, Lech maneh es Yisrael v'es Yehuda, go and count Yisrael and Yehuda. Okay, so there's a lot that's going on in this very first pasuk, but before we get to this very first pasuk, we have to look at the complementary version of this pasuk, which is in Divrei Hayamim. So a lot of what we have in Sefer Shmuel is mirrored in Divrei Hayamim, but it's kind of recast. So one of the things that Divrei Hayamim likes to do is gloss over or entirely remove any sins related to David. So David comes out much squeakier. There's an agenda that Divrei Hayamim has to kind of present the Malchus, especially the Malchus of Yehuda, in a positive light. So the very same pasuk is in Divrei Hayamim Chaf Aleph, Divrei Hayamim Aleph Chaf Aleph, and here we get a new character, V'yamod Satan al Yisrael, and Satan. Now there's a difference between Satan and Hasatan, but for our purposes, we'll just refer to this as the adversary. So the adversary stood up, Satan. Could it be Satan? By Yaset as David limnos Yisrael and Satan, right? It's not we don't want Hashem to be inciting David to sin. So instead we have this new character, Satan, who is the one that convinces David to go and sin. So David here kind of seems like the patsy a little bit. That's interesting. The Satan is like the representation of the Af Hashem. I like that. Yeah. We'll see. There's actually going to be more of this in the parak, but the idea that like Satan comes in to kind of test or cause trouble for a hero is very very Jobian, very very much in the vein of Eov.
Why was Hashem mad at Israel?
Oh, that's the $64,000 question that does not have a good answer.
Near the last couple of weeks.
Right? No. If you look in Rashi will tell you, I have no idea, says Rashi. I have no idea why God is angry and taking this out on Israel. So in a vacuum, we get all kinds of answers, such as chapter 23 ended on the mention of Uriah HaHittie, so we can always chalk things up to Hashem being angry because of the sin of Uriah HaHittie. We have a medrash that says that no, in fact, Hashem is angry because of how well things have kind of wrapped up. By the end of chapter 23, everything is kind of tied up in a nice, neat little bow. We know who all the heroes are, and all the enemies have been vanquished. But, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, don't rest on your laurels. why are you not building the Beis Hamikdash, right? David, you brought the Aron back to Yerushalayim. You started the process, and why is that good enough? You should be going the next step and being involved, and not just you, David, but the whole people should be part of this process. And we'll see the parak ends with that. So there's kind of some thematic qualities to that. But the most transparent answer is we don't exactly know why. We can speculate. Vayomer HaMelech El Yoav. So the king has now been convinced that what he needs to do is count the people, and he says to Yoav Sar HaChayil Asher Ito, the head of, usually Yoav is the Sar Tzava, right? He's the head of the armed forces. Here it's a little bit different. He's like the head commander who was with him. He says, "Shoot na b'chol shiftei Yisrael." This is again language that we find in Yoav, where the Satan is described as being shoot ba'aretz, that he's traveling around, making the rounds. So he tells him to go around all the shiftei Yisrael, midan ve'ad Beersheva, from the south to the north. Upikdu es ha'am v'yadati es mispar ha'am, and I want you to take a census of the people so that I will know how many people there are. Again, here we start getting speculation as to the nature of the sin. Technically, are you allowed to count Jewish people or not allowed to count Jewish people? Forbidden.
No, you're allowed to.
Permitted.
You're permitted as long as you do it right. You can't count, you have to collect Hatzi shekel or something.
So you can't count Jewish people. You can count shekels, or you can count.
To the number. You're allowed to get to the
right.
number.
You can count mispar shemot. You can count.
You can't count the people without doing something.
There you go. So that's one issue, is what he's doing is counting the people as opposed to the permitted way of counting shekels or counting the mispar shemot, whatever the case may be. The other problem is that you can't count them for no reason. If you're counting the people because you need to know how many eligible soldiers you have in order to go attack the Plishtim, and you want to know, can I divide the camp up into 2 groups, 3 groups? So if there's reason for it, then you can count the people. If you're counting the people just as David says here, v'yadati es mispar ha'am, I want to know, right? So that is for God alone. God counts the Jewish people just because they're precious to him, in the same way someone counts their wealth, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu counts Yisrael. But David, these are not your people. You're the shepherd of these people. You're not the owner. You're not HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? You're not supposed to be counting the people for your own aggrandizement. And that might be part of the problem of what David is doing over here. It is interesting that he's enlisting the army to do this, right? He doesn't ask one of his courtiers to go around and count the people. He's assigning the Sar Tzava, the Sar HaChayil, to go around. Maybe there's a military conscription that's associated with this. Vayomer Yoav El HaMelech. Yes, go please. Yeah, sure.
Why does he say Es Yisrael Es Yehuda?
So that's a very important point too. He even here at the end of Sefer Shmuel, we're still treating. We saw at the end of the battle between David and Avshalom, there was a difference between Yehuda and Yisrael, and we're still getting this kind of tribalism where the nation has not been unified. Right.
At this point.
Yeah. Okay, so the other thing I guess I should point out is Chazal talk about making David make a mistake. So David talks about like Hashem should take an account when he's talking to Shaul and Shaul is chasing him. So David uses the same kind of language that Hashem should take accounting of your actions, and so Kadosh Baruch Hu brings that back on David and says, David, I'm going to make you err. You're going to make a sin with something that even children know. The children know the pasuk that you're not supposed to count the Jewish people, and yet David is making a mistake in something that is so obvious that Yoav is going to tell him exactly that. Vayomer Yoav El HaMelech, Vayosef Adonai Elohecha El Ha'am Kahem V'Kahem. God should add more and more, and continue to increase the number 100-fold. Mea pa'amim ve'enei Adoni HaMelech ra'os, and you should see it. V'Adoni HaMelech lama chafetz b'davar hazeh. Why do you want such a thing? This language is a little reminiscent of how Natan rebuked David when David took Bathsheba. That he said to him, if you wanted more wives, God would give you kahena v'kahena. That same kind of language, kahem v'kahem. You could have had more and more. So Yoav is here kind of in a more subtle way. Later on, chronologically, Yoav doesn't talk as subtly to David when he reprimands him. Okay, So v'yichazek davar hamelech el Yoav, but David prevails over here. And v'alsarei achayil v'yetze Yoav asarei achayil. Now we have Yoav and the officers of the armed forces going out lifnei hamelech lifkod es ha'am es Yisrael, to go out and count the people. The Yisrael. We have here the Am and Yisrael. V'yavru es hayarden, and they kind of circumambulate the country. They go out first to the territory of God. Chazal say the reason for that is because God is known as fierce warriors, and Yoav is essentially hoping that someone will call him out on this and shut the whole thing down. If he's got to go, at least he can do a very bad job, and hopefully the thing will fall apart. So v'yavru sayar v'yachnu ba'arora yamin ha'ir asher b'toch hanachal hagad v'al Ezer. And v'yavo hagilada v'al eretz tachtim chadshi v'yavo dana ya'an v'saviv el tzidon. So he's going around in there. I don't know if they have a map in there, but in that mikra they have it. He starts going to the east, goes up north, and then moves around in a circle, coming back down to the south. He stops in places that are not populated with majority of Jews. So he is trying to kind of slow the process down, or do it in a way that is not as successful. And in fact, the Chazal say he actually comes back with two different numbers because of that. Right now he's going to non-Jewish cities. Vayitzu el Negev Yehuda be'Ershava. Vayashutu b'chol haaretz. And finally, he's traversed the whole land. Vayavo miksei tish'a chadashim ve'esrim yom Yerushalayim. And after 9 months and 20 days, which is the human gestation period, he comes back to Yerushalayim. V'yitain Yoav es mispar mifkad ha'am el hamelach, and he's got the number to report to the king. Vatihi Yisrael shmona meos elef ish chayil sholev cherev. So you have 800,000 soldier-ready with their sword-drawn men. Yehuda, and then because we're counting Yisrael and Yehuda separately, Yehuda also has chamesh meos elef ish, another 500,000 men. So that's his report. The numbers are different between here and Divrei Hayamim. Essentially, one of the explanations for that we mentioned in an earlier parak where there were a whole bunch of converts. So the question is, do we count the converts in this number or not? That's the reason for the discrepancy between the two. Give me 1 second. Okay, so Yoav returns, he gives the number, and the second David hears that, he knows that he's messed up. Vayach leiv David oso acharei chen safar es ha'am, and there's a psucha in the middle of the pasuk. Afterwards, David's heart, they translate here, he reproached himself. His heart smote him for having numbered the people. David is the only person in all of Tanakh whose heart plagues them when they do something wrong. Vayomer David, and we talked before, I think, extensively about how part of the reason that David is selected is because of his heart and how his heart follows HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vayomer David el Adonai, Chatasi me'od asher asisi, v'yata Adonai haverna es avon abdecha ki niskalti me'od. So he hasn't been reproached by anybody. No Navi has shown up to give him a mashal of the sheep and no. He did this all on his own. I have sinned grievously in what I've done. Please, O Lord, remit the guilt of your servant, for I have acted foolishly. These two phrases, avon and sakal, are used by Shaul when he avoids taking responsibility for his various sins. And David here is attributing it to himself, confessing that he's done wrong and he knows that he did something wrong. Okay, so what are we going to do about this? Vayakam David baboker, and David gets up early in the morning. Dvar Adonai haya el Gad Hanavi Chosed David lemor, and Gad Hanavi, who we've had once before in Sefer Shmuel, he receives a message to go and speak to David. Haloch v'dibarta el David, Komar Adonai. So says God. Shalosh anochi notel alecha, bachar lecha achas mehem v'aseh loch. I will give you 3 options. Pick your poison. This is also unique in Tanakh. There is no one else who was given a choice of what punishment they would like to have for their sin.
He already confessed.
Right. He already confessed, and he knows that there's something coming, but Hashem has given him the option to pick what outcome he would like. Which of these punishments do you choose? Door number 1.
That's crazy.
Yes, it's pretty crazy, but Rabbi David Silver points this out. It doesn't seem that this is actually the purpose of this is for him to just kind of pick willy-nilly. It's actually a test, and we're going to see that a little bit more as we go. So the Navi comes and says, God is giving you the choice. Pick which one of these I should bring upon you. Vayavo God el David. So God dutifully does his job. Vayaged lo, and he comes to David and says the following: Vayomer lo, hatavo lecha sheva shanim ra'av ba'artzecha. Would you like to have 7 years of famine come upon you in the land? Or would you like option number 2? Im shlosha chadashim nuscha lefanecha tzarecha v'hu rodfecha. Or would you like to have 3 months where you run away from before your enemies and they pursue you? V'im, or option number 3, hayos shloshes yamim dever ba'artzecha. Or would you like to have 3 days of plague in the land? Ata da urei ma ashiv sholchi davar. So now you have to consider what you want and respond to me, and I'll let God know what your choice was. So I'll put the question to you. What would you pick?
Curtain number 2.
Curtain number 2. Why?
Because that's always the one without the turtle wax.
It's the goat.
You should choose the one where he's fleeing because it's on him.
Because it's what?
You should choose the one where he flees.
Right. That's number 2.
Mm-hmm. Because
he flees before the enemy.
Because the sin was his.
Ah, that's interesting. So you're saying when David is fleeing, it's really only David that's fleeing, not the army.
Not his people being suffered.
Not his people. Okay.
All the other ones involve punishment to the people.
That's true.
And this one does not involve punishment to the people. It involves the actual David.
Well, if the enemies are overrunning the land, I
think it affects everybody. I think they all affect everybody.
Okay.
I
So
don't read it.
so Stephen, which one would you pick?
I don't want to be hungry, and I don't want to be running from enemies. I could deal with number 3.
With the plague.
Plague.
Okay.
So
Is
what
that
is the
gonna kill
plague? That's the thing.
Yeah, is that
You would
killing
think, oh, it's
people?
only 3 days, so
Right. How bad could it be?
Is it
so
killing
how
people?
bad is it gonna be?
Is it killing people?
Yes, the plague will kill people.
It'll kill people.
Aha.
Uh-huh.
It's like much worse than COVID. You're still going with the plague.
Nah, I don't want to die. I'd rather be hungry.
Right.
Because like how bad's the family gonna be, you know?
Right. Right.
So,
Well, all of them have a time-bound component to them.
yeah, but
So you
again,
know when they're going to be over. But what are you going with?
well, again, how bad is the family gonna be?
You don't know.
So
You know how long it's going to be. You don't know
it
how
might be
bad.
long. Like initially
To-
think
to
I'll go
make-
with the 3 days, but if I'm gonna
make
lose
them-
20,000 in those 3 days, I'll take a famine that I'm hungry, you know?
Right.
To make them, people dying, no, I mean.
But people
it's not-
die, I don't wanna
no, no,
minimize.
No, people are dying in this famine. I don't assume people are just going hungry. There's not enough food, and some people are dying in this famine, so. I don't.
Okay. So
I don't know what I did.
it's a hard question, right? It's pick your poison. So the reason that we may assume that this is a test is because in Shmos, we're told not to count the people, and we're told what happens if you do count the people. That if you count the people, Exodus 30, pasuk 12. Ki tisa es rosh b'nei Yisrael lifkudehem. When you take a census of the Israelite men according to their enrollment, but nasnu ish kofer nafsho ladonai b'fkodosam. Each person should pay the pekida, the ransom to Hashem for being enrolled. The lo yeh bahem negef b'fkodosam, so that there not be a plague.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you look at the language that God uses, he says, pick what you want. Da urei ma ashiv sholchi davar. Right? He's hinting to him, you know what you should answer me? Answer me davar, like dever, like that's the one you should be picking, right? Of all the things, if you David really understand who's in charge, then what you should be answering is, I don't get to pick. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, right? So the only one where you're completely dependent on God, as opposed to people, if you have famine, then you're going to rely on other people for their food. If you have war, you have to rely on other people to fight to fight those enemies. Dever is the only one that's completely out of your control. And in fact, the cynical reading of this is that David picks that one because that's the one he can't get blamed for. If there's no food, you blame the king. If there's war, that's the job of the king. The only one that can't be traced back to David directly is Dever, and that's sort of what David does, but he does it in kind of a backhanded way. Vayomer David el Gad, and this pasuk might sound familiar to some people. Tsar li ma'od, niflana biyad Adonai, ki rabim rachamav, uviyad adam al apola. David says to God, I'm in great distress. Let me fall into the hands of Hashem, because his compassion is abundant, right? Uviyad adam al apola, and I would not like to fall into the hands of men, which means essentially he's taking out option number 2. Soldiers chasing me and me having to run away, that's me falling into the hands of other people. Maybe you can say that the famine is also, I'm going to have to rely on, peace treaties with other nations to get food or whatever the case may be. But at very least, he's saying, I don't want option number 2. But beyond that, I'm not picking anything. Let God do whatever he wants, and he'll have Rahmanas. Vayitain Adonai Dever b'Yisrael, and that's what God does. God picks option number 3, which is the punishment for counting the people. So he places a plague b'Yisrael mehaboker v'yad eis moed. From the morning until, this is a very vague term, until the appointed time, eis moed. It's not the full 3 days, as we're going to see in a minute, because so many people are dying that they have to cut it short. So it's not clear what this eis moed is. But in the whatever amount of time, let's assume, according to at least one opinion, it's like half a day. It's from the morning until chatzos of that day. Vayamas min ha'am midan ve'ad Be'ersheva shivim elef ish. That's an extraordinary number. Yeah.
Does the punishment fit the crime? I mean,
right?
Yeah. No.
I mean, so this goes back to what was God angry about? I mean, God must be really angry. This is, I think, the largest number of like the loss of Jewish people that we have in the entire book.
Yeah.
At least
What's
an
the
exact
percentage?
number.
We just got the number of people, 500.
There's 1.3 million that we said. Yeah.
We lost
70,000.
No, it's 1.3 million soldiers.
1.3 million soldiers, and this is
70,000
men,
people.
Men, and I'm assuming there's 7,000 of those men.
5%.
Maybe women. Come to think of it, if you ask the question, like, and I wasn't dubbing them out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that good kid.
Right.
I like a bad kid. Even in a famine, I'm going to have food if I'm the king.
Right.
So I would probably choose the famine.
I hear that, and the flip side of that is if there's plague, I'm just as susceptible as anybody else, right? So if I'm choosing that, then I'm saying I'm part of the problem, right? I'm with the people in this.
So David's on a higher level than the bad kid.
Than you.
If I were to play the bad kid.
Okay, so but we're not done. There's 70,000 people that have died from morning until whenever this Eis Moed is. Vayishlach yado hamalach Yerushalayim. So the plague is embodied here in this malach that is going around causing destruction, and now the malach has come to Yerushalayim, l'shachata, to destroy it. V'inachem Adonai al hara'ah, and God has he renounces the evil that he was planning to do to Yerushalayim. Vayomer lamalach hamashchis, and he says to this destroying angel, Ba'am rav ata haref yadecha malach Adonai haya im goren aravna hayavusi. So he says to the destructing angel, with the people, it's enough. Haref yadecha is like stay your hand, and the malach at that point is by the granary of Orna hayavusi. Okay. So let's see, there's a similar pasuk in Divrei Yamim, but it's a little different. Let's see if we can pull that up. Vishlach ha'elohim malach liYerushalayim. Here, God is sending the malach to Yerushalayim, lahashchisa, to destroy it. Ukeshehashchis, and as he's destroying things in Yerushalayim, ra'ah Adonai, God sees it. V'inachem al hara, vayomer lemalach hamashchit, Ravata harefi adecha umalach Adonai omed im goren aran hayevusi. So there Hashem sent him directly to Yerushalayim to do this. He tells the Malach, kind of hold your hand back from further destruction, and this all seems to happen chronologically before David does what he's about to do. I think that these two things are almost happening in parallel, though, because we're going to see that David sees the Malach there and goes to the granary in order to offer up a korban to stop the plague. So if David's doing that, that would indicate the plague is still happening versus Hashem has stopped the plague, and David's actions are consequent to that. Vayomer David el Adonai biroso es hamalach hamakeh ba'am. So David sees the Malach, and the Malach is still involved in destruction. So David davens to Hashem, Vayomer hinei anochi chatasi, I have sinned, v'anochi hevisi, and I'm the one that has transgressed. V'ela hatzon, and these sheep, meaning my people, me'asu, right? What have the Jewish people done? Tihi na yancha bi ubebeis avi, let your hand fall upon me and my father's house. I think this is the ultimate in accountability here, to say I would rather me and my family receive the punishment and the destruction as long as the people are spared. It's almost like Moshe, macheni na misifracha. Let it happen to me. Moshe doesn't want to let the Jewish people receive the punishment. The same thing over here with David. He's saying, I will take it all upon myself. Leave the people who he's supposed to be their shepherd. And remember, David started off as a literal shepherd. So David takes this upon himself. And vayavo God el David bayom hahu. So God comes to David and says, Vayomer lo aleh hakem ladonai mizbeach begoren aravna hayevusi. There's a reason the Malach stopped in this specific place, because the granary of this guy named Arona, who is not Jewish, he's a Jebusite. Remember, before David came to Yerushalayim was a Yevusi city. He conquers Yerushalayim, but allows certain people, maybe, at least according to one opinion in the Gemara, Aravna is a Ger Toshav. So David has allowed some of the Goyim to stay in Yerushalayim, and there's a symbolic reason that the Malach stopped there. Says the Navi to David, it's because we want you to go do something over there. Vayal David kidvar Gad kasher tziva Adonai. So David does exactly what the Navi said. Vayashkef Aravna, and Aravna looks out the window, and who does he see? Vayares Hamelech v'yasavadav ovrim alav. He sees the king and his entourage coming to visit him. Vayetze Aravna v'shachru lamelech apavarza. And when the king comes to greet you, you go out to greet the king. So he bows down on his face before the king. Vayomer Aravna. Now, Arnan Hayevusi has a question. Like, in the middle of all the destruction that is going on, why is the king coming to visit me? Madua ba Adoni Hamelech el Abdo. Why have you come to your servant? Usually, the lower class person goes to the higher class person, not the other way around. Vayomer David liknos mi imcha. Oh, welcome. Was it okay? Liknos. Yeah. Liknos mi imcha es hagoren. I'm here to buy a granary. Livnos mizbeach ladonai, in order to build a mizbeach. Why? Because, as you may know, if you're reading the tweets, there's destruction going on. The whole nation is in turmoil. We need a way to stop this plague. And just like in the Midbar, you stop the plague with ketores, with a sacrifice. There it's incense. Here we need also to offer a sacrifice to stop the plague. Vayomer Aravna el David. So the Aravna answers him, Yikach el David, Yikach vayal Adoni hamelech hatov be'inov. You take whatever you want and offer up whatever you want. What's yours, what's mine is yours. Hatov be'inov re'ei habakar le'olava hamorgim ukle habakar le'itzim. Take the cattle, offer them up as korbanos. You can take the threshing boards and use that for the wood, for the altar. Everything is at your disposal. Hakol natan Aravna hamelech lamelech. So all of these, Aravna, the way they translate this, I think, is wrong. Here they have all this, O king, Aravna gives to your majesty.
Is Aravna ever mentioned before?
Never mentioned before.
Or after.
Right, correct. No, we don't get any mention of him before. I think here he's
just buying the
right.
temple mount from him.
Well, so we haven't even mentioned that. We can get to it now. This place that Aravna owns, this Goren, is a very significant place that is not mentioned anywhere in our psukim, but it happens to be Har HaBayis, right? David is buying this place to set the foundations for the Beis Hamikdash. We have many indications in the Gemara that David did whatever he could to prepare for the Beis Hamikdash. This is the beginning of that process. He dug the foundations, the shittim wells, everything that he could do, short of building the Beis Hamikdash because he was told he can't. All that starts over here. This granary, Orna HaYevusi doesn't know that he's sitting on a gold mine, like literally the holiest place in the world, right?
But it's also not really mentioned.
Not mentioned here at all. Not mentioned here at all. Until we get to Shlomo, until we get to Malachim, we don't even know this. We know this because we know this, but it's not mentioned in the text. So he tells him, I need this place because I need to offer up a korban. And Ornan HaYevusi says, by all means, take whatever you need. Hakol nasun aravna hamelech lamelech. And there's a stuma in the middle of the pasuk because, again, whenever you have a vayomer after a vayomer, it's because the person A who's speaking finished speaking, expected person B to respond. There was no response, so person A has to then resume the conversation. So we started in 22. Vayomer Ravna, he makes this proclamation to David. David doesn't even know what to say. This is so generous. He tells him, just take everything that you want. So therefore, we get a stuma to show that there was a pause. David doesn't respond, so Aravna has to then respond to the silence and say, Vayomer Aravna El Hamelech Adonai Elohecha Yirtzecha. Hashem should favor whatever you want to do. It's all up to you, David. What would you like to do, David? Vayomer Hamelech El Aravna Lo Ki Kano Ekne Meoscha B'Mechir V'Lo El Adonai Elohai Olos Chinam. No, I'm buying this. This is one of the Chazal says this is one of the three places that are specifically purchased, not conquered, right? Even though we conquered Yerushalayim, David goes out of his way, right? Maras HaMachpelah and Shechem. This is something that I have to purchase. Ki kano ekne meoscha b'mechir v'lo elel Adonai Elohai olos chinam. I'm not offering up korbanos for free on your property. But you came David es hagoran v'es habakar bekesef shkalim chamishim, and David buys everything, the whole kit and caboodle for 50 shekel kesef. In Divrei Yomim, we get a significantly greater number of 600 pieces of silver. The difference, the way Chazal explained it, is that the 50 shekel kesef was per shevet. So each shevet gives 50 shekel kesef. That gets you to 600, and that way each shevet has a chelek in the Har Habayis, in the founding of the Beis Hamikdash. So vayiven sham David mizbeach ladonai vayalo losu shlamim. So David builds over there an olah, and he offers up not just olos but also shlamim to make shalom between the Jewish people and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'yatar Adonai la'aretz v'te'etzar ha'magefa me'al Yisrael. And Hashem responds to the plea, and this is where the plague finally comes to an end. Okay, a few things to point out over here. The first is, does this story remind you of anything? Where you have the Jewish person coming to buy a specific piece of land. The person who owns the land tells him, you don't have to buy it, I'll give it to you. And he insists, no, I really want to buy it.
And then he overcharges him.
Right, right? So the same idea, I think, is what's going on over here. Yeah, and then he overcharges him.
It's not 50, it's 600.
Right. The other thing that the Dot Mikra points out is there's a lot of similarities, especially in language, to the story of the Akedah. I think the idea over here is that this is a foundational story in terms of where the book is going to go and where the story of the Jewish people's history is going to go. And I think it also really ties back to where David started, which was also at the threshing floor. It was the granary of Boaz, right? That's where Ruth and Boaz met, and the whole story kind of took place and started from there. Please God, next week we will try to address my hobby horse question of why was David able to keep the kingship after having sinned, while Shaul lost the kingship for what appears to be much more minor infractions than David.
He said Chatasi,
Okay.
which you can't think which sin.
So that's one of the things we have to discuss. What were Shaul's sins versus what were David's sins? And then we will, please God, have a siyum and bring this all to a close. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Chazak. This is the end, beautiful friend. Thank you for joining us on our journey of learning, and I hope you will tune in for another episode soon, Mirz Hashem. Be well.